I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I didn't say a word when my stepdaughter looked me dead in the eyes at the dinner table and told her mother that I had never been and would never be real family. I just set down my fork, folded my napkin, and excused myself from the room, quietly, the way I do everything. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, I had already started making calls. I want to be clear about something before I tell you the rest. I am not a man who looks for conflict. I spent 32 years working in civil engineering, managing projects, managing people, managing expectations. I know how to stay calm when everything around me is falling apart. I know how to read a room. I know when a structure has been compromised from the inside, and I know that no amount of patching the surface is going to save it once the foundation is gone. My name is not important. What is important is that I am 63 years old. I worked hard my entire life. I retired 2 years ago with a modest savings, a house I paid off myself, and what I believed was a second chance at something I had missed the first time around. My wife, I'll call her Renee, and I met at a mutual friend's backyard gathering about 4 years ago. She was warm. She was funny in a way that didn't try too hard. She had been divorced for 9 years and raised her daughter mostly on her own, and I respected that immediately. Her daughter, Kayla, was 26 at the time, living in a rental apartment 2 towns over, working at a salon, managing her own life. I met Kayla twice before Renee and I got serious, and both times she was pleasant enough, quiet. A little guarded maybe, but I understood that. Her mother was starting something new. Kids, even adult kids, need time. Renee and I got married 18 months after we met. Small ceremony. Close friends, a few family members. I was happy. I mean that genuinely. I was 61 years old, and I was genuinely, quietly happy. The first sign came about 4 months into the marriage. Kayla called Renee on a Sunday afternoon crying. Her landlord was not renewing her lease. She had 60 days. She had already looked at 3 other places and couldn't afford any of them on her salary. She didn't ask to move in with us, not directly. But the conversation went on for 40 minutes, and by the end of it, Renee came to find me in the garage where I was sorting through some boxes. She stood in the doorway and looked at me with that expression I had already learned to recognize, the one that meant the decision was mostly already made. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Kayla was her daughter. The house had a spare bedroom. It was supposed to be temporary 3 months, maybe 4, while Kayla saved up a proper deposit and found a stable place. I told myself that was reasonable. I told myself I would have done the same for my own son when he was that age, and I had. Kayla moved in on a Saturday with 2 carloads of things and a boyfriend who carried boxes and then disappeared and was never mentioned again. The first month was fine. She was quiet, kept to herself, used the kitchen at different times than us. She said thank you when I cooked, which I did most nights. She did her own laundry. I thought, this is going to be okay. This is manageable. The second month, things shifted. Small things at first. She started leaving dishes in the sink overnight. She started having a friend over on weekday afternoons, loud conversations, the television up. She stopped saying thank you at dinner. Not dramatically, not with any announcement. Just gradually, the way habits form when someone starts to feel too comfortable. By month 3, she had taken over the living room most evenings. Renee and I would find ourselves retreating to our bedroom to watch anything, because Kayla would be on the couch with her phone and her shows and her snacks spread out across the coffee table. I mentioned it once, gently, to Renee. She said Kayla had been under a lot of stress. I nodded. I waited. Month 4 came and went. Then month 5, then 7. I stopped counting at 10. In the 14 months that Kayla lived in my house, she contributed nothing financially. I never asked her to pay rent that had not been the arrangement, but I had assumed, after the first few months, that she might offer. That she might say something like, let me help with groceries, or let me cover a utility bill. She did not. She did take a 2-week vacation to visit a friend in Florida, which she posted about extensively, so I know she was not without funds. She just chose how to spend them. I also know that during those 14 months, she applied for exactly 0 apartments. I know this because Renee told me once, in a moment of frustration after a long day, that Kayla had looked at listings but felt the market was too uncertain. I did not respond to that. I went out to the back porch and sat with my coffee until I felt calm enough to come back inside. Here is what I want to say about Renee, because she is not a villain in this story. She is a good woman who loves her daughter in a way that sometimes made her unable to see her daughter clearly. That is not a character flaw. That is a mother. But it meant that when I tried to raise concerns carefully, privately, always just the two of us, she heard it as criticism of Kayla, which she then absorbed as criticism of herself. So I learned to say less. I kept most of it inside, and the inside got crowded. Kayla and I were never warm, but for a long time we were functional, polite. We operated in the same space without incident. I drove her to a car repair appointment once when her vehicle was in the shop. I fixed the bathroom light fixture in her room without being asked. I shoveled her car out after the blizzard in February because it was there and I was already outside. She said thank you for that one. I remember because it was notable. What changed, I think, was the retirement party. My former colleagues organized a small gathering at a restaurant downtown to celebrate my proper retirement, after I formally closed out my consulting work in the spring. It was a nice evening. People said kind things. My son flew in from Seattle, and that alone made the night worth it. I came home that night feeling, for the first time in a while, genuinely seen. I made the mistake of sharing that feeling at breakfast the next morning. I was talking to Renee about how moved I had been by a few of the speeches, and I said something like, it made me feel like the work I did actually mattered. A small thing to say, honest, a little vulnerable. Kayla was at the counter making coffee. She didn't look up, she said, flatly, without any apparent awareness of how it would land. I mean, you were just a government engineer. It's not like you cured cancer. Renee went very still. I looked at the side of Kayla's face for a long moment. She was scrolling her phone. She had already moved on. I excused myself from the table and went to shower. Under the water, I stood there for a long time. I was not angry, exactly. I was something quieter than angry. I was done. I didn't say anything that day, or the next day. I have learned over 63 years that the decisions that stick are the ones you make after the feeling passes, not during it. So I waited. I gave myself a week. And when the week was over and I still felt the same way, I started making plans. The first call was to my financial advisor. I had 2 accounts that Renee was listed on as a secondary holder, not joint accounts, but ones where I had added her for convenience early in the marriage. I moved those back to individual status, quietly and legally, and without drama. The second call was to my lawyer. Not to talk about divorce, not yet, just to understand my options. To know what the landscape looked like before I decided which direction to walk. The third thing I did was look into the guest cottage. My brother owns a property about 2 hours north of us. He and his wife have a small cottage on the back of their land that they rent out seasonally. It was sitting empty. I called him, explained the situation in general terms, and asked if I could use it for a while. He said yes without asking too many questions. That is the kind of brother he is. I packed 2 bags over the course of 4 days. Not all at once, a few things at a time. Moved to my car, unremarked upon. I took my important documents, my medications, my tools. I took the box of photographs from my first marriage and my son's childhood, which I keep in the back of my closet. I left everything else. On a Thursday morning, after Renee left for her book club and Kayla was still asleep, I put an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letter, no explanation, no lengthy list of grievances. Just a sentence. I need some time. I'll be in touch. I got in my car and I drove north. My brother and his wife did not make it a big deal. They showed me where the extra key was, made sure the heat was working, and left me alone. That first evening, I sat on the small porch and watched the tree line go dark, and I did not feel sad. I felt like a man who had finally put down something very heavy. Renee called 6 times that first day. I did not answer. I texted once. In the evening, I'm safe. I just need some space. Please respect that for now. She texted back 17 messages. I read them. I didn't respond. Kayla, as far as I know, said nothing. By the 3rd day, Renee's messages had shifted. The first ones had been panic, then confusion, then hurt. By day 3, they were starting to sound like self-reflection. She wrote, I think I know why you left. I don't want to assume. Can we talk? That one I sat with for a while. I called her on day 5. The conversation was hard, not because there was shouting there wasn't. It was hard because she understood more than I expected her to. She said she had talked to Kayla after I left. She said Kayla had initially acted unbothered, almost dismissive. But then, apparently, 2 days in, Kayla had come to her mother's room at midnight and cried. She felt the absence. She understood, maybe for the first time, that the structure she had been living inside was not guaranteed, that it had been held up by a person who had chosen to hold it and had now chosen to stop. I didn't feel triumphant when Renee told me that. I felt tired. She asked me what I needed. I told her the truth, which was that I needed to know that if I came back, things would be different. Not just promised to be different, actually different. I told her that I needed Kayla to have a move-out date, a real one, not a vague intention. I told her I needed to feel like my home was my home again. And I told her that the comment about the retirement party, the government engineer comment, needed to be acknowledged directly. Not explained, not minimized. Acknowledged. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I should have said something when she said it. I froze. That was wrong." That was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was talking to my wife. Kayla called me 2 days later. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was about 90 seconds long. She said she hadn't realized how her words came across. She said she had been stressed. She said she was sorry. It was not a perfect apology. There was still a layer of self-justification in it, a faint undertone of explaining rather than owning. But it was something. From her, it was something. I stayed at the cottage for 11 days total. When I came home, the house felt different. Kayla was there. She had not moved out yet, and I had not expected her to have done so in 11 days. But something in the atmosphere had shifted. She looked up when I came through the door. She said, "Welcome back." She didn't say it warmly, exactly, but she said it directly, and she met my eyes when she did. Renee made dinner that night. The three of us sat at the table and ate. It was not comfortable, but it was not hostile either. It was the beginning of something that would take time. I want to say something now to anyone who might be listening, any man who has been in a situation where he felt like a convenience rather than a person. Like a name on a lease, a number in a bank account, a function rather than a human being. I know what that feels like. I know the slow erosion of it, the way you adapt and adjust and tell yourself it isn't that bad, until one day someone says something small and ordinary and you realize that you have been running on empty for longer than you knew. Leaving was not a punishment. I want to be clear about that. I did not leave to teach anyone a lesson. I left because I needed to exist in a space where I was not invisible. I needed to remember what it felt like to matter, not because of what I provided, but because of who I am. Kayla moved out 6 weeks after I came home. She found an apartment with a coworker, split the rent, made it work. She did not thank me when she left, but she did shake my hand at the door, and she looked at me when she did it, and I think that was the most honest thing she had ever given me. Renee and I are still married. We are not the same as we were before, but I think we are something better, more honest, more clear-eyed. She knows now that my patience is not infinite, and I know that she is capable of choosing me when it matters. Both of those things are worth knowing. The envelope on the kitchen table, the one Kayla found after I left, because apparently she was the one who came downstairs first, had one more thing in it that I haven't mentioned. Under the sheet of paper, there was a sticky note. On it, I had written a single question. When someone disappears, what does that tell you about how visible they felt? I don't know if she read it. I don't know if it meant anything to her. But I meant it as a genuine question, not a weapon. Because that is the thing about going quiet when you have been overlooked for too long. It is not an exit. It is a request. It is the last way a man who has said everything gently and been heard by no one finds to finally make himself clear. I made myself clear. And for the first time in a long time, I was heard.